What's up, everybody? It's Josh coming at you from Nerd Ventures Tower. Thor Love and Thunder, the latest entry into the MCU, is here. I just got out of the theater. I want to give you my sort of raw reaction, my raw take on Thor Love and Thunder. And unfortunately, guys, I really did not enjoy this movie. I actually liked it way less than I thought I would. And I don't think I really was coming into this with too high of expectations either. Now, look, there's a couple of things I want to say before I get into the different things that I really didn't like and all of that, right? First of all, I totally recognize that sometimes it's not awesome to watch somebody talk about something that you really love and, besmirch it or, poop all over it, right? So if you're one of those people that really like Thor Love and Thunder, if you're an MCU fan and you love most of the MCU content we make over here, this might not be the video for you. I'll try to start with some stuff that I really enjoyed, but I just got to be real. I really didn't enjoy the movie, and so I want to kind of get into that and talk about it. I also want to say that I loved Multiverse of Madness, and I know that it was a divisive movie. I know a lot of people probably felt the way I feel right now about Multiverse of Madness, and so it's just wild, right? Things are really subjective when it comes to film, and I will be seeing Love and Thunder again. I'm really interested in how the second go-around is going to hit me. It's possible I'll like it way more. There are movies in the MCU, like, for instance, Guardians 1, that I actually did not enjoy that much on my first time through, but upon rewatching it, I really, really liked it and thought it was a great, great film. So perhaps something like that will happen with Love and Thunder, but my raw reaction, the honest take here, guys, is that I really didn't like the movie. So let's start with the positive. Let's start with the stuff that was really good in the film, and I will say that it looks great. It very cool visually, like the stuff with the color coming out and, on that moon. You've seen it in the trailers, right? It looked amazing. The visual effects for a lot of the lightning stuff looked amazing. There's a couple of wonky CGI moments. Like there's a moment where they're walking down, Jane's talking about her catchphrases, and it feels so weird. The CGI helmet is like very obviously being keyed onto her face. It like really uncanny valleyed me. It like really took me out of it. There's a couple of bad moments, but overall, not bad. Like visually very cool. Thor looks awesome. He does a lot of badass things in the film, which is really, really cool. I like that quite a bit. I will also say that interestingly, a lot of the sort of narratives out there or the things that people are saying, like in their reviews, are things that I don't necessarily agree with. Like a lot of people are saying like, oh, the film's too jokey. I actually don't think that's my issue with the movie at all. Although, to be fair, it could just be this thing where maybe I was so taken out of it by how jarring I felt the editing and the story was that I wasn't laughing at the jokes or really caring about the jokes because I was sort of lingering on the stuff that wasn't working for me. So that's possible. But the jokiness of the film really didn't bother me. I still laughed at the movie in a lot of different moments, and there's some genuinely really funny stuff in here, which you would expect from Taika Waititi. There's also really cool Marvel stuff. There's MCU stuff that's dope, man. Like, the gods and that whole thing and kind of learning a little bit more about that, seeing Valhalla. I enjoyed seeing Eternity. I thought that was amazing. I don't necessarily love the making Eternity into a wishing stone in the MCU. I'm hoping there's a little bit more to it than that. But generally speaking, it was still really cool to see that get paid off. I love the idea of a character born of Eternity or like a miniature version of Eternity. I'm pretty sure that was in the comics at one point. Like my mind was going towards the Apocalypse Twins, but I don't think that's what it is. I do think there were actually like infinity beings in Marvel Comics. So I'll research that a little bit. And tomorrow morning when we do our spoiler live stream on the live streaming channel, I'll get into that as well there. So there's like juicy Marvel stuff. There's stuff that I really, really like. Seeing the Guardians was dope. A lot of fun stuff in there. I do think that the romance is well handled between Jane and Thor. And it's not really like upsetting, kind of like anybody, because I know there were some people that were like wondering like, oh man, is Jane just gonna be the best and sort of push Thor down, and that's sort of a meta discussion that happens out there, sort of co-opted by the culture war or whatever. But I didn't really feel like that was happening. I also don't feel like Jane is completely inept as a character either. I don't feel like it's a poor depiction of her as a character. I almost feel like the whole relationship though is like worrying way too much about optics, because it doesn't really feel organic or like it has like an actual driving force. There's nothing really interesting going on there. I could see and almost feel these like interesting ideas there, but it really kind of amounts to, I like you still, you know what I mean? Which is fine, but it's not complex, right? So I don't know, man, like that part of it's good enough. And I will also say that, there's some discussion of like, man, they're doing Jane Foster Thor and she's just going to be the best. And it's so crazy. And they're pooping on Thor or whatever. No, like Thor's still called Thor. Jane still has a lot to learn from Thor. I think that Thor is given agency and Jane is given a pretty good arc and she's able to make a noble sacrifice at the end of it. But that's kind of where my praise ends for the movie. Again, surprisingly bad. And I think one of the worst things about the film is the editing. And when I looked at the credits at the end, there was like 5 or 6 editors or something. So it really does seem like this movie was a total mess and was sort of put back together by maybe many different editors out there. It's just really jarring. And the narration of Korg, I don't know if that was a late edition or whatever, but it really seemed out of place. And it seemed like just this way to narratively glue this real mess of a story together by these scenes with Korg doing the narration. It was like, okay, okay. But, these little like jarring cuts and these moments that feel unearned, they kind of just like stack up to the point where about halfway through the movie, I found myself really disengaged from it and not feeling anything. I didn't really feel anything. All of the story events, all of the character moments, they feel really predictable. And it like about halfway through the movie, I began to feel like we're just literally going through the motions. Like it's just going through the motion, getting to this end scene here, and nothing surprised me. Nothing was really interesting. I don't know. It's like kind of so MCU and so Taika, it almost feels like maybe the movie was like a total and complete mess narratively before this, and then when they piece it back together, the only real identity it has is like sort of cookie cutter Marvel beats and really cookie cutter Taika type moments and Taika type humor. So I don't know. Gore is really cool, and they definitely have some fun scenes with him, but we did hear that there were real heavy reshoots with Gore like earlier this year or maybe even late last year. I don't remember, but I'm kind of thinking maybe that scene where he does the weird story with the kids was one of them because, man, like for as good as his performance is, it feels totally wasted. It feels like it's wasted not only in this movie, but in the MCU overall. I mean, Gore, the Necro Sword, some of these ideas are so dope and so awesome. And at the end of the day, like Gore kind of amounts to nothing. And I don't know, like it's just, there's good here, but it's really hard to cheer for this because they do the MCU thing again where they kill the villain and it's just like he's outie. And also like his motivation is good, but most of the cool stuff he does is off screen. It's literally off screen. And then he also has minions that he creates over and over again with the sword. And it's just not compelling. Like there are a couple of moments in the film that are like awe-inspiring with Gore. And some of them are in action. Like when he has like a little fight with Thor right in New Asgard. And there were moments in that I was like, wow, this is freaking awesome. But then he just bails. You know what I mean? Like Christian Bale for real. Like, cause he just bails. And even at the end, man, like the fight's just it's not as good as it could be. It's not as good as it should be. And next to nothing about like the darkness, what's the voice, like what is any of this? Like the Necro Sword's just described as an ancient weapon from the beginning of time, but they can destroy it. Well, if they can destroy it, like why was Zeus so, I don't know, dude. That's the other thing is like there's so many leaps in logic in the movie that, I just think that at the end of the day, there were probably some really, really good ideas here, but it's just very obvious that a lot of what they shot and a lot of what they did not fit together to make this incredible movie. Now, the other thing I want to say here, and I know some people are talking about like all the stuff that was cut, and yeah, tons of stuff was cut from this movie, right? Obviously, it's a very short movie, and there's talk of like this 4-hour cut. Grace was talking about this. There's this belief out there that there's a better version of this movie out there that's maybe less Marvel or something like that. And look, of course, I'm a super Feige fanboy, but I'm going to be honest, my gut tells me this is the best version of this movie. And that's kind of sad, but I do believe that. I think this is the best version of this movie because at the end of the day, it's really messy. A lot of this stuff is just not going anywhere. And so he just had to sort of beat by beat pull it together in somewhat of a narrative that makes sense. And you at least can tangibly understand the ride that you're on. You understand the ending and then you get out of there. It reminds me a lot of Rise of Skywalker, which is, again, not a great thing to say. But like, I think at the end of the day, Feige just recognized, he was like, man, there's no way we can actually make this an incredible movie. So let's try to make this at least an enjoyable movie and nail some of the beats at the end and kind of just like get out of here. I'm curious. I'm really curious. Like, what are fans going to say about this? Because it has, again, the fourth lowest Rotten Tomatoes score out there. Now I kind of see why. Genuinely did not like the movie. And I'm just kind of interested to see what are fans going to say watching it over the weekend. There's been a serious lack of hype for this movie, too. I wonder if that's somewhat by design, right? Like, I wonder if they just kind of know what they have and they're doing it. So I don't know, man. There's going to be all kinds of narratives, I think, spun out of this at the end of the day. Like, it's not get broke, go woke, or whatever that shit is. It's not that. It's just not a well-crafted movie. Like, Marvel movies tend to have a very, very good, at least like narrative, right? Like they actually do hit, in my opinion, more than not, a really high quality story, a really high quality movie, a very enjoyable movie. Go look at the Rotten Tomato scores for the MCU overall. They're incredibly high, because at the very least, you know, despite, you know, maybe not liking all the things they do in a particular movie with a particular character, by and large, the movies themselves are really enjoyable. They're really good movies. And unfortunately, this one to me is a real miss for Marvel. And so I'm going to be interested, man. Like, is this going to affect Taika's Star Wars movie? We talked about that on the morning stream. We'll talk about that next week as well. Is this going to affect more Thor? Because they do lead off in some crazy places, which we'll talk more about tomorrow on the stream, you know, with Love and the Eternity Child and Hercules and all that, right? There's some cool stuff there, but do we really want Taika to do another one of these movies? I don't know. Like, these are discussions we're going to have as a fan base. So come on by the live streaming channel tomorrow. Of course, let me know what your thoughts are about the film down in the comments section right now.